Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Thai master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie, I'm excited because here in the northeastern part of the U.S., the warm weather has arrived. I actually got to go out in my short sleeves and get a walk in, and it felt comfortable. And it was just, it's my favorite time of year because I love spring.
You're just rubbing it in because it's just been rain and storms here. It's not fair. One day we will get out and we'll see that yellow thing in the sky.
Okay, that's good. Well, isn't that kind of a myth, though, that, I know England it does get a fair amount of rain, but isn't it like, we kind of overstate there's like so much rain that comes down, and it's a lot, but it's not like you are raining like 3/4 of the time or something like that.
No, I think it's actually raining all the time at the moment. It's been particularly bad. You literally look at our forecast and it's like rain for the next 2 weeks, and yeah.
Okay, well, maybe it's not overstated.
It certainly isn't, trust me.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough. So I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to celebrate the fact that we are experiencing the good weather. And then when you get the good weather, you can join in on that celebration.
I'm celebrating your weather, hoping that it comes over.
That's a good way to bring it in. Well, there you go. All right. And we have a special guest joining us today. His name is Daniel Roz. And Daniel has a very interesting, one of those stories that has like a whole, I'm losing my words. It has a whole bunch of stuff that it's a quilt. That's what it is. It's a quilt work of all kinds of interesting experiences that have fit together that have, as so many of us have experienced in our own lives, it's pieced together the life that he has right now. I was having a conversation with someone who I was interviewing somebody actually for the gardening service. And I ended up hiring her. And we were talking about how all those little disparate things that occur to us in our lives that seem so disconnected, how they all come together and, oh my God, I'm doing all of them. And I have a feeling the same thing is what happened with Daniel. So let's find out if that's true. So Daniel, first of all, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you guys having me on.
We're glad to have you. And now, is my guest correct? Is it like a patchwork quilt that has all come together and everything just kind of fits?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. You only realize it after the fact. You can only connect the dots backwards, not while you're living it. But through everything, I would say that's accurate.
Okay, so give us an idea of what that quilt looks like. Tell us the story.
So I was born in Israel. When I was 6, my family and I moved to China. And this was in 2004. When I was pretty much the only non-Chinese person when I lived in my city. So China was very different than what it is 20 years ago. Exactly what you imagine it to be in the movies. There was dogs hanging upside down, skinless, because that's what the people ate. There was all sorts of animals. Chinese food in China in the early 2000s is not Panda Express. It's not the same thing as your local Chinatown. It's very different. It's what you imagine it to be. And being an extremely picky child, between the age of 6 to 12, I ate nothing but McDonald's, chicken nuggets, and Starbucks hot chocolate. That's the only thing I consumed. Probably the most unhealthy child there was. So at the age of 12, I started playing basketball. And my brother convinced me that if I wanted to get better at playing basketball, I should start eating healthier, which was pretty much any diet except what I was doing. So I slowly started trying new things, started expanding my taste buds, and got more into nutrition. And at the age of 17, even though I was really good at basketball, I only felt confident on the basketball court, but nowhere else. And at 17, I started lifting weights, started developing my body, my fitness. And I realized that, unlike a basketball, I could take my body with me everywhere I went because it's a much more transferable skill. Yes. So that led me to get more into the exercise and fitness portion out of it. And so I became a personal trainer. I went to university in Canada for an exercise and nutrition degree, worked in a few gyms. Then in 2020, I'm sure a few of you might have heard there was a lockdown thing going on. So that completely threw away my plans. And that's when I started my online fitness business. And the reason why I decided to help people lose weight without going to the gym is firstly, I was not prepared for the shutdown. I don't know about you guys, but I did not predict it. So from one day to the next, be like, okay, stay in your house. And I had to get myself in shape at home. But because at that point I had a decade of nutrition and exercise experience, I was able to still get myself in phenomenal shape. And the reason why I still train people now at home is because I realized that people that often need the most help hate going to the gym. So everyone has like a keto or a vegan. I don't take that approach. My approach is lose weight sustainably without going to the gym while still eating the food you love.
It makes sense. I'm recalling a visit that we had with another guest about, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Was it 2 weeks ago? You know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they had been through, it was a couple that had been through their own weight loss journey. And he made a comment that has stuck with me ever since. I've actually referred to it a few times. He said, anybody who is dealing with weight issues already knows what they have to do. That's not the challenge. The challenge is figuring out how to get themselves to do it. I thought that was
100%. And that's definitely true. And the reason why I believe exercising at home rather than the gym is superior to a lot of people is out of the last 5 movies that Anne-Marie and Walt that you guys have watched, how many of them were at home versus how many of them were in a movie theater?
Good point. Yeah, mainly at home.
Why? Because turning on Netflix is a lot more convenient than driving to a movie theater. And if every time you have to watch a movie, the only option is to go to a movie theater, it's like an event. You're way less likely to be consistent with it. So if we're able to make exercising more convenient, it's a lot easier to be more consistent. Because the people that I work with don't want to be bodybuilding world champions. They don't want to run marathons. They don't want to deadlift more. They just want to flatten their belly, get off CPAP, get off medication, have more energy. That's it. And to do that, you can accomplish all that at home.
Which is a great point. It was funny when you asked about whether we'd seen more movies through Netflix or in the theater. I actually grew up in an era before internet and Netflix, so I probably saw more movies that way. but as I think back, I guess I probably have seen more at home since then. So maybe I do come out on that side of the ledger. But yeah, when you said that, I just kind of chuckled to myself because I thought to myself, that wasn't even an option when I was growing up. So we kind of had to go out. We didn't have much of a choice at that point. Actually,
but people bought videos and more, didn't they?
What was that, Anne-Marie?
Sorry, I was just saying people bought videos and stuff back then, didn't they? And like Daniel says, and there was like exercise. I mean, no, my mum and exercise videos and that they were everywhere.
Oh yeah, I can remember when the Jane Fonda video came out in the 1980s. It just took the entire country by storm. And it seemed like nobody was using it, but everybody was getting it.
Yeah, all the dads were watching it.
The dads were, yeah, that's right. But once again, and this is actually, I think, probably the biggest challenge for anybody who's trying to deal with this issue is it's one thing to have it at home. It's another thing to put it to use. I found for myself, like, I prefer to exercise at home as well. I got myself an exercise bike, but I put it right in the middle of the living room where I can't miss it. Yeah. So I actually do use it every day because it's right there. I mean, I have to walk around it to get to a chair. It's just right in front of everything. I promise you, if I had that in the basement, I wouldn't have touched it in the last month. But because I have it right where I can't avoid it, I use it practically every day.
Yeah, 100%. Key is to make it as easy as possible to make the right choices and more difficult to make the wrong choices. So if I want to eat a banana, I just need to walk to my kitchen that's 10 seconds away. If I want to get ice cream, I have to get in the car, drive to the grocery store, get the ice cream, talk to the cashier, buy it, come back, open it. That's more of a hassle. So if you make it as easy as possible to make the right choices and as difficult as possible to make the wrong choices, it's not easier to succeed.
Interesting choice too. To when you have to go to the store in order to get the ice cream, you threw in there. You had to talk to the cashier too. It's almost like you added that in as an extra thing that you had. That's funny. Okay, so as has happened with so many people, the COVID pandemic led you into a new career that fit beautifully, dovetailed perfectly with what your previous experience had been, and you were recognizing the value of people uh, attaining their goals in their home. I'm willing to bet, though, it wasn't smooth sledding all the way. I'm willing to bet that there were a few bumps along the way. What were some of the bumps?
So running a business in general is not easy.
Yes.
And this is probably, I would say, my first one. I've tried to tackle and go about it in many different ways, right? So at first I tried to not sell coaching, just sell coaching programs. But as again, we keep on saying people don't lack knowledge, they lack accountability. So if I believe if I just sell information, that's not good enough. I have to sell my time and one cause communication and accountability, because that's what will actually make the difference. And in terms of actually the methods, obviously like Facebook, Instagram, running ads, doing posts, sending messages, try it all. And for me, what works best right now is actually Twitter or X. That's where I do most of my posting. I've been able to grow the most over there. And I guess to connect it to fitness and healthy eating and diet, some people think that the best way to advertise is to post on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. For me, I personally like Twitter, so I do more of that. And I'm not saying it's the best for everyone, but it's the best for me. Same thing with diet. I don't believe that there's a one size fits all diet that's unanimously best for everyone. Try different things, see whatever works for you, what you like the best, and stick with that.
What do you find are the, I want to phrase this carefully. What do you find that with your clients are these are the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the top 5 blocks, the top 5 resistance points that are keeping them from achieving their goals?
So I would definitely say the top one is mindset, which is why I believe accountability and actually talking to them makes the biggest difference. Because to change the way you think, especially if it's counterintuitive to your instincts, I believe you need to have a conversation. You can't just read a PDF. That's not good enough. So a big mindset difference between people that are fit and people that are overweight is that people that are fit view health and fitness as a continuum, and people that are overweight view health and fitness as binary, as in yes or no, all in or all out. So let's say that the plan was to exercise for 30 minutes, but life happened, extremely busy, stressed, you only have 20 minutes. The fit person thinks, okay, I can't do 30 minutes, but I can do 20 minutes. Let me do 20 minutes. The overweight person thinks, I can't do 30 minutes. I'm not going to do anything. That's an example for fitness. In terms of healthy eating, let's say that the objective scenario, the objective fact is that you only have junk food around. The overweight person thinks, well, I only have junk food around. I don't have a choice. I'm just going to eat junk food. The healthy person thinks, well, out of the options that I have, there's still healthier options from the current options that I have. So how do I pick the best options from the circumstance? So it's always doing things as a continuum, as always going towards the right direction, rather than 100% yes or 100% no.
Which makes sense, because if it's binary, it's going to be easy to say no.
Exactly.
when you have to come up with a gray answer, that's when you have to kind of think about, okay, how am I going to justify not doing this thing I don't want to do? And then all of a sudden you're thinking about how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny the mind games we have to play in order to make this stuff work. I want to ask you a question that came up in a conversation with one of my other co-hosts, Joel Elson, a week ago, because we were talking about health and healthcare, and you just referred to healthiness and junk food a few times in what you were saying there. It occurred to us that health is one of those things that almost never gets defined. And if it does get defined, it usually gets defined in terms of not being sick, or not being overweight, or not being unhealthy, or not eating junk food. Or how would you actually define health without referring to the opposite?
Getting closer to you to optimal well-being.
Okay, talk about that.
So when people say this food is healthy or this food is unhealthy, and like you mentioned, most people don't even define the word health or healthy food. So if what do they mean? Be like, hey, you should eat this cookie because it's high in protein, it's healthy. But just because something is high in protein doesn't automatically make it healthy. But if you think about it in terms of, does it move me closer to optimal well-being? Yes or no? And that's 100% context related, because what's quote unquote healthy for one person can be literally poisonous for another person. And it can move them further away from optimal well-being in a different scenario. So if your optimal well-being, if you're trying to lose weight and you already consumed more than what you needed in terms of calories for the day, then by definition, everything that you eat will move you farther away from optimal well-being. So everything you eat is unhealthy. So if you ate more foods than you were meant to for that day, even if you eat healthy foods like broccoli or Brussels sprouts, doesn't matter, that's unhealthy because it's moving you away. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're on the brink of starvation and you need to eat food to survive, by definition, every food is healthy, even if it's donuts, because if you don't eat it, you will die.
Yeah,
so two extreme examples, but just to illustrate the point that there's no such thing as a healthy food or unhealthy food. It depends on your goals, your exact context, and what your individual needs are. And for that reason, a strict meal plan is unlikely to be effective for 100% of humanity.
Yeah, that's a good observation too. Because what you're really saying is it isn't about being healthy or unhealthy, it's about being healthier or unhealthier.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's a relative comparison. It's not an absolute.
Exactly. Because when people say this food is healthy, without saying it, in the back of their mind, they say in comparison to something else. So they might say, hey, this food is healthy in comparison to Dunkin' Donuts donut.
Which is an easy comparison, by the way. I'm
Which
just
is
saying.
an easy comparison. Be like, okay, but compared to that, almost anything is healthy. Or another end of the spectrum, be like, hey, this is not healthy, but they compare it to the supreme top organic, grass-fed, whatever. But that sets a high standard that most people can't realistically stick to. So when people say this is unhealthy or unhealthy, always ask compared to what. And when you realize that everything's on a huge continuum, as long as you're not on the wrong end of the continuum, as long as you just move closer to where you want to go, then even though it might not be the very best, if it's healthier than what you usually eat, that's a plus.
Yeah, it makes sense. Another topic that comes up when we talk about these kinds of things is the topic of, how do I want to phrase this one? It's the topic of if I am moving forward, am I making a habit out of it? Or if I am not making a habit, am I still moving forward? I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this, but basically there's a controversy that goes on. Some people believe that habits are difficult to change, and therefore adopting a new lifestyle toward, in this case, a healthier lifestyle, healthier eating habits, healthier exercise, and so forth, it's going to take a while, because it takes a while to train ourselves, to train our nervous system, to train our neurological pathways and so forth, to shift the way we're thinking about it. But once we can go through that process, whether it be 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days, whatever it is, then it becomes habitual and becomes easy after that. There are other people who argue it doesn't take all that long. You just have to make some shifts and it'll happen pretty quickly. And I'm kind of curious to know, where are you in that debate? Do you think it's something that is going to take a while? Do you think it's going to take a short time? What's been from your experience of actually working with clients?
I love that question because, again, let's define habit. It's a word that people just throw around without actually thinking what it means. So for that reason, I don't believe it takes 7, 21, 90 days. I believe those are arbitrary numbers that don't mean anything. You only develop a habit want you to do something despite it being super inconvenient. So I can't call you a competent driver unless you have driven in snow, on the highway, doing traffic, when it's extremely busy, when there's nothing going on, when there's chaotic drivers in front of you and behind you. I can't call you a competent driver unless you actually experience it all. Same thing with fitness. If you can only lose weight when things are ideal and conditions are perfect, then you have not developed the habit. And for that reason, it should excite you when you're traveling, when things are extra chaotic, when you're extremely stressed, because it's a new circumstance. And if you can lose weight then, that proves to you that you can lose weight no matter what happens. So if you want to develop a habit, it can only happen when things are super chaotic. If things are smooth and you do the same thing over and over again, the habit is not developed. Only when things are extremely chaotic and you still do it anyways, that's when the habit is developed. For that reason, again, it should excite you when shit hits the fan, when there's chaos, because that gives you the opportunity to create the habit.
Anne-Marie, I think this is the first guest we've had in a while who says he's in favor of chaos and crisis.
But we know that's where the growth comes from, don't we? We know that's where your superpowers are, is in that chaos. And you're absolutely right, because I mean, I've dieted in the past and I've been so strict. I've literally not gone out, not done anything, and put my whole life on hold, cut my calories ridiculously low to get to a particular size, but it wasn't maintainable because it wasn't realistic. And that's absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's a great point. If you think about, I want to make this a lifestyle, and think about in the long term, over the next decade, am I going to eat out in a restaurant? Yes. Am I going to travel? Yes. Am I going to eat out with other people? Probably. So if you're going to do it over the next decade, might as well realize that, how can I maintain this? How can I still make the right choices, even during those circumstances? That's the best mindset to go into it.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, taking chaos and crisis and finding a way to turn it into sanity.
Yes, because if you think I can only achieve this when things are calm, then when life does get hectic, which it always will, over the next decade, I guarantee, family member is going to go through an emergency. Work is going to get extra chaotic. Something's going to happen. And if you're not prepared for that, then it's going to go really badly once inevitably that does happen.
It kind of reminds me of the phrase, relatively famous phrase that comes from 12-step circles, which is their definition of insanity. Insanity being repeating the same behaviors over and over again while expecting a different result. You're basically turning that one on its ear and saying, well, I'm not going to repeat the same behaviors over and over again. In fact, I'm going to deliberately put myself in a position where I definitely would never repeat the same behaviors over and over again. And in that way, expect a different result.
Yeah.
But what about those moments where...
right there? Yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. Yes.
I love it. What was that, Anne-Marie?
But I'm just wondering about those moments, because yes, you can be nobody's 100% perfect. Just nobody is. And if you are, then that's just no fun. But there are going to be times when, you know, old habits are going to come out of you, and there are going to be moments where maybe you hit insane pressure, there is an emergency and something, and those old habits come back for a little bit. How would you advise your clients around that?
That's an excellent question, because I believe the difference between, again, me and people that are overweight is not that I believe my best week and most people's best week is identical. The difference is my worst week and people that are overweight's worst week is drastically different. If you look at most people between January 1st to January 8th, during that week, most people work out way harder than me. They eat way cleaner than me. They drink way more water. They get high quality sleep. They do everything right way more than I do. However, my standard, made my worst, when things completely went chaotic, when nothing went right, when I completely fell off, what that means was I only worked out 3 days a week. I only drank water sometimes. I only hit my protein goals maybe 3 days of the week, and I only got 6 hours of okay sleep. That's made my worst when nothing went right and everything went awful.
Many people
And
would say
made my best.
it was weak.
Huh? So yeah, that's when nothing went right. That's because my standards is really high, but my best is not that different, and other people's best might be the same, but the standard when things are awful are all the way down. When they fell off, it's they had McDonald's every single day, and they ate a bunch of donuts, and they drank a bunch of soft drinks, right? Red Bull, a bunch of other things that made them gain a bunch of calories. They did drugs or drink alcohol. Like they completely let themselves go, and they let themselves go is a way lower standard. So to answer your question, Anne Marie, I believe when things are most chaotic, that's when you need to have what I call the easy wins ingrained inside of you. That's what we need to have certain standards ingrained inside of you. So no matter what happens, I'm going to have a water bottle within arm's reach. Very easy, and it's very easy to do, right? So I might not be optimally hydrated, but me at my worst, I'm still going to be 80% hydrated. No matter what, I'm still going to, when I have phone calls, I'm still going to work. I'm never going to sit and talk because it doesn't take an extra time. Might as well burn extra calories. There's certain habits that I'm going to implement no matter what. My cheat day might be half as bad as other people's cheat day, as an example. So even made my worst, when I completely let myself go, I might have 3 scoops of ice cream. I'm not going to eat the entire tub. So raising your standard of pure to worst, that's what matters the most. Because again, if we look at a long-term horizon, during a full year, there's going to be 3 weeks when all hell breaks loose, when things are completely awful and you're stressed out of your mind. And what you do during those weeks matter more than what you do at your best. So getting those standards as high up as possible is what matters.
So how do you get yourself to remember when you're in the midst of those 3 weeks of chaos and crisis?
It's about developing the habit before, because all of us have been in a scenario that despite being super stressed, despite being super overwhelmed, we still brush our teeth because it's who we are as people. It's ingrained in us. It's like you don't even think, should I do it, should I not? It's who you are. So it doesn't cross my mind to drink more water or to eat high protein foods or to stop eating after I'm full. It's just who I am as a person. So that's why building those habits and getting that mindset is so important. And it's difficult to do on your own, which is why it's not easy to have somebody else help you. Because everyone knows green means go and red means stop. But not everyone can just listen to those directions and become a competent driver. Most people need a driving instructor, and that's accepted universally. That, hey, if you want to drive, have a driving instructor. Sure, you can go on your car, you can YouTube how to drive, but you probably crash and injure yourself. Same thing with fitness. Sure, you could go on your own, you can Google things, but you'll injure yourself and set yourself back. And that's probably not worth it.
It's interesting to hear you describe this because I'm thinking about my own approach to how I handle habits. And I'm thinking back to the question that I asked earlier about how long does it take to establish a habit? My personal take is it takes all of my time. I mean, every single day I'm trying to reestablish my habit, because that's how I get myself to get through those moments that you were just describing, where all heck's breaking loose and you're just you feel like you're going into your deepest dive, and that tub of ice cream is looking awful good right now, and even though it's not going to be, but you could tell that you're just driven that direction. That's one more opportunity. Like the way you're saying it is a little different from the way I'm saying it, but the outcome is the same. I'm thinking about that as one more opportunity to reestablish my habit, one more time to establish, one more opportunity to say, you know what, I'm just going to change a little bit here. I'm not going to avoid the ice cream entirely. I'm not going to eat the whole tub. I'll let myself have a little bit, but I'm also going to remind myself this isn't actually feeding where I want to go. Where I want to go is to also have that cup of water next to me, or to have that higher quality food at dinner, or whatever it is that I know is my next thing that I want to do to get myself into that higher, healthier plane. So for me, it's an ongoing thing. For me, it never stops.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the mindset comes in, doesn't it? Because you could easily have those couple of scoops of ice cream and think, I failed, I've eaten ice cream. Or you can focus on those little things going, do you know what? Actually, I would have had the whole pot, and celebrating that little win, and that little win making you feel a little bit better about yourself, your confidence, and building on that. So I think it's celebrating every little change and doing those little things to make yourself feel good, and then these decisions will become more natural.
100%. That's a great point. And again, if we go back to the binary thinking versus continuum thinking, the person that you mentioned thinks binary, thinks, okay, if I eat ice cream, I'm going to go on the bad side of health. I'm going to go all the way here. But that's not reality. The reality is, okay, if I'm here, I eat ice cream, I go slightly in this direction. That's it. Well, that's what the fit person thinks. And the fit person realizes, be like, okay, if I eat 3 scoops of ice cream, that might move me an inch to the wrong direction. But next day I can keep going, keep doing what I did before, and keep moving in the right direction.
Indeed.
I find that the challenge is with the ongoing conversation I have with myself, because that's kind of what you're describing. You're describing that internal conversation. Some of the elements that I find to be really important for me in terms of my internal conversation include those instances where I'm going into that deep dive, where things are falling apart around me, and I'm about ready to eat that ice cream, and I take a moment to consciously remind myself, I can tell I'm gonna have some of this ice cream, but I also have to remember I'm probably gonna feel worse after this. I mean, my initial implication, my initial thought is, well, this is gonna make me feel better, but I know from experience it never actually makes me feel better especially when I'm going into one of these deep dives. It actually makes me feel worse, and it's kind of a way of talking myself into maybe having a little bit less of it. Sometimes I even avoid it entirely. That's kind of a rare one, but I sometimes am able to pull that one off. But at the very least, I can kind of rein myself in a little bit just by reminding myself, as much as I want this to make me feel better, it's not going to make me feel better. In fact, it's probably going to make me feel worse.
And that's good, because so many other people, I mean, certainly I've done it, is where I've been like, oh God, well, I've eaten some ice cream. Well, I might as well go and eat the cake as well then, and just completely write the whole of today off. And then tomorrow I'm going to eat lettuce. And then obviously lettuce all day is not achievable. So, and then it's that perpetual cycle of, well, this is going to make me feel better. I failed already. And it just, again, it absolutely back to that mindset that Daniel mentioned.
Yeah. So I think you're right, Daniel. Mindset is the whole thing.
Yeah, again, just avoiding the all or nothing mentality, which is extremely common, that what I've found from all the people that I work with, that, okay, the fact is you ate ice cream, cool. What does that mean? The person with binary thinking says, well, that means I failed, therefore I should continue to fail and eat ice cream, etc. The person that's fit says, well, that doesn't really mean anything. I'm just going to keep doing what I have been doing. And they keep going back to the normal habits that allow them to continue being fit. That's the place you want to get to, when it doesn't matter what type of day I have, it has no effect on my next day. Even if I had an awful day, next day I'll get back on track. Not a big deal.
I'm also reminded of people who have appeared on the show, actually, who have talked about how if you're going to do something like having some ice cream, change your mindset about having the ice cream so that you really do enjoy it. I mean, if you're going to subject yourself to the negative effects of ice cream, at least give yourself a high vibrational experience. Because what we often tend to do, and I think this is what leads to the binging, is we don't put ourselves into this space of saying, oh, I'm just so much enjoying this. Instead, we didn't get enjoyment out of it, so we go to get some more, because it's the next one. The next one's going to give me the enjoyment, even though it's not going to. So we get the next one, and then the next one, and that's where you're going to for the cake that Anne Marie's talking about. Because you're still trying to find that one piece of junk food that's going to make you feel better, even though none of the last 5 did.
Yep.
That's the insane portion again, by the way. I'm just saying.
Well, it's not though. It's just almost an addiction, isn't it? It's I certainly know that from my experience, like with sugar. I mean, I'm getting way more under control now, because my mindset has changed, and it's taken, you know, you have to get to that stage where you are now officially ready to change. But I think what I've really, what Daniel said is actually you don't need to go out to do it. You know, you don't need to go and join a gym. You can go and walk outside, which is probably help, you know, better for you getting that fresh air, being with nature, helping your mindset, and also working out at home. There's so much out there now on YouTube and other platforms, and one-to-one coaching via Zoom. It's amazing nowadays. It's a good position to make those changes.
You've actually become quite a bit of an expert of dealing with those mind shift situations. I mean, you went through the whole TIA thing, so you're a TIA graduate. You've been through a variety of different things, actually. What do you find is your best tool, I guess, or your best way of getting yourself to change the way you're thinking about something, to change that mindset, to make that shift?
I think it's just when you get so unhappy that you're just like, or you're so in so much pain. Like recently, I've started to change my health, Daniel, because my knees were bad. My meniscus was in painful, and now I think it's kicked off arthritis. And I'm like walking up the stairs in agony, and I'm like, I'm 50 years old. You know, what's it going to be like another 20 years? So it's like, no, this is the moment. This is what I have to change. So I think it's like hitting that point where it's too unbearable to go forward, or just this isn't serving me anymore. I need to make a positive change. And it doesn't have to be something drastic, but it's just something when you just have that realization that this isn't how I want to go forward.
I believe everyone makes a change when they hit rock bottom. They can make a change before then, but when they do, everyone does. Okay, I'm not going to go in lower than that. What's interesting is if you raise your rock bottom, then you raise when you're making a change. So some people, when they look at themselves, I'm just going to use arbitrary numbers just for the sake of the example. Some people look at the body and say, 13% body fat, dang, I look awful. I have to make a change now. Other people say that when they hit 30% or 50%. Now we can get into body dysmorphia, etc. But the point, to illustrate the point, is people look at themselves and everyone has a different rock bottom. And if you just raise that, as we talked about earlier, if you just raise your standard of the minimum of what you're willing to accept, that will change everything. So many people focus on raising your aspirations as in reaching for more, but instead I believe it's now more effective to raise the bottom of what you're willing to accept.
True. And I think there's also having that belief as well. So how do you work with your clients on building their belief system so that they believe they can actually do these changes?
Yeah, that's a huge one, because so many people that I work with that are 300 pounds, 400 pounds, they don't even believe they can make a change. So you have to really baby step and get them to realize that it's not going to happen overnight, but they definitely can make a change. It's definitely possible for them. And they can definitely be just like my other clients that got off CPAP or got off medication and have more energy and have to throw away half the closet, like it's possible. And they're no different than you. They just kept going. And just because they encountered one bad day, which everyone encounters, they didn't give up. They just kept going. That's why, again, the consistency and making sure that you don't stop, that makes all the difference.
Absolutely. And that consistency builds that habit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how it's important to change our dialogue about what constitutes healthiness. In fact, we tried to. You gave a very concise, I thought, a good definition of what healthy lifestyle, healthy feeling is. In what way can we use, however we define health, as a way to get ourselves to make that shift, to make that mindset shift? In other words, how do we take that information of what is healthy or healthier for us? How can we take that and turn it into the action steps, those baby steps that you were referring to?
A good question to always ask yourself is, does doing this action move me closer to my goals? And if yes, probably do it. If no, then ask yourself, is if it's moving me further away from my goal, is the temporary increase in feeling better worth it, worth me getting further away from my goal later? Because I believe everyone strives to feel better. The difference in most people is, do they go about it in the short term or the long term? Because if you only optimize for short term feeling better, that often leads to feeling worse in the long term. And if you are willing to temporarily delay your gratification, delay how you feel right now, then oftentimes in the future you feel a lot better about yourself. Because this is like deep psychology things that I've been thinking about. But if you think about feeling bad to feeling great in terms of 1 to 10, in terms of the scale 1 to 10, most people label 10 as happy and 1 as sad. But I don't believe that's an accurate representation. If 1 is feeling bad and 10 is feeling the best, then 1 is ashamed, 10 is proud. Happy is probably like an 8, sad is probably like a 3. So the way you truly feel your best is when you're proud of yourself. Because you can be happy when you eat ice cream or when you hear a funny joke. And yeah, you feel good, but you feel so much better about yourself after you made a significant accomplishment, or you helped someone made a significant accomplishment after a lot of work. And you feel worse about yourself when you are ashamed, when you did something you know you weren't supposed to do that made yours and other people's lives worse. So if instead of asking yourself, will this make me happy? Because that's only an 8 out of 10. If you ask yourself, will this make me proud? That will often make you feel a lot better in the long term.
It's an interesting observation. Yeah, I like that observation because what you're really talking about is building an excitement into the higher vibration.
But also, when you're saying feeling proud, I know when you were saying that, I was like, oh, and like thinking about things that made me feel proud. So you're focusing on what you do want. You are focusing on that proud emotion, which you kind of get that feeling, and that spurs you on, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, very good. I like that.
Like it.
So you've been doing this. How long have you been doing the coaching now? Was it since the pandemic or before that?
So 3 years, a bit more.
Okay. So in those 3 years that you've been doing it, if you were to look back on like what the great success stories are, because we always like what the success stories are. So from your perspective as the coach, what do you see as the great success stories? They may not be what the client thought was the great success story, but from your perspective, what do you see as the great success story?
One of my favorite, and he is one of my first client. And this was way before I had nearly as much social proof in all the testimonials I had. So I basically just say, hey, trust me, I can help you. Way before I had all the proof that now it's beyond obvious. And because of that, he was a bit skeptical and his wife was extremely skeptical. And she did not want him to do this at all. But he did this anyways. And not only did he lose a bunch of weight, but because he changed who he was as a person, he developed his habits. His wife also followed suit. Even though I never talked to his wife, she also got off medication. She also lost weight. She also had to throw away a bunch of her wardrobe because the clothes didn't fit. And I thought that was really inspiring from a person that had a lot of skepticism towards me because she never even talked to me, to a person that thanked me even though I never directly worked with her, just because when you improve one person's life, that translates into other people's lives, especially health. Because I don't know about Walt. You might be the 1% best piano player of all time. You might be the 1% worst piano player of all time. I have no idea. Unless we talk about the piano playing skills, I would never know. But through looking at you, I can tell if you're in the top 10 or 20% in health or the bottom 10 or 20% in health. Everyone you talk to will know instantly, and how competent you are in regards to health fitness will affect them. How competent you are in regards to piano won't really affect them. So nothing against playing piano, just as an example. But health and fitness is the most transferable skill. It will affect not just you, but everyone around your life more than anything else.
Well, I suppose I could inflict my piano playing on them, and that would actually give them a clear indicator. But I take your point. I think your point's a valid point.
I think would your piano player make them want to go and do a run, Walt?
I wouldn't rule that one out. That's definitely possible. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say in my favor is I wrote and created the theme music. So if you want to know what my playing is like, listen to that for about 10 seconds and then turn it off. But what he was talking about, Anne Marie, that's that effect that the husband had on the wife. That's something. Well, that's something any parent knows. You know that with your girls.
Well,
you experience that on a regular basis.
I do, and I even experienced that today. Exactly what Daniel was saying is because I've recently started concentrating on my health. I've got a trainer, and then the days in between, I do like even just little kind of videos from YouTube, just like increasing my fitness. My little one was doing that with me over the weekend, and then today, I was like looking in the corner of the room, and she was on her iPad, and she was doing a little fitness app. And she was doing her own exercises. So I could see that's not something she's done before. And she's watched me. She's had a go with me. And then she's like, oh, I want to do that as well, because it's actually quite fun. So, yeah, I completely agree with what Daniel just said. It does ripple out.
In fact, I'm reminded of guests who've been on the program. One in particular who was actually a co-host for a while. She talked about how she would get Post-it notes because she liked to do affirmation statements. So she would put Post-it notes and she'd attach it to the mirror in the bathroom or something like that. And then every day she would see her affirmations. And I think they were actually regarding weight loss. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it was. And not only did she lose the weight, but her husband lost the weight because he saw the same messages every single day in the mirror in the bathroom. So there's a direct example of how you have an effect on somebody else just because you're making a change in your own life. It's amazing how that plays out. Is that something that you try to encourage, Daniel, when you're talking to clients? Do you try to encourage them that if you're making this change, you're also going to affect other people for the positive, for the better?
I get them to realize that oftentimes it's more than just about themselves. It's about their kids, about inspiring other people. What I found really interesting is a lot of people, especially that are really overweight, they actually really want to inspire others. They want to be an inspiration to others. They want to show other people it's possible. So in general, people are willing to work a lot harder and willing to do a lot more when they realize it's more than just about themselves, when they realize it's bigger than them. That allows people to really push the needle and give their best effort. Because if I say, hey, do this, it will make you feel better. Again, think about the crowd. This will make you feel happy, like, okay, I don't know how hard I want to push, but I'm like, hey, this will make you feel proud because I'm not saying it directly, but subconsciously, doing this will make you feel proud because you'll be an inspiration to others. Then people are allowed to, they're willing to push a lot more and sacrifice a lot more and really go all out when they realize it's more than just about themselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fairly common thing. People will much more easily do something for somebody else than they'll do for themselves. And kind of the inverse on that is we are more critical of ourselves than we are of anybody else.
Yep.
So it makes sense to refocus attention on how it's going to help somebody else. The thing that I notice, and I'm curious to see what your take is on this, the thing I also notice is that there are people who will argue for doing something for somebody else kind of as a way to avoid doing it for themselves, if you know what I mean. In other words, as a way to distract. They don't really want to think about it in terms of doing it for themselves, so they'll do it for somebody else. And there is a certain vicarious benefit that comes out of that. Mm-hmm. But I think that they find that it's not as effective because on some level, they're just not really letting it in to their own psyche. They're just doing it for somebody else. I think you kind of have to do it for both, don't you?
100%. Oftentimes, it's a lot easier to give advice than to take it. And that's why sometimes, even if someone has the same information and same knowledge as you, sometimes it's good to listen to them because people, for whatever reason, don't like listening to their own advice. So even if you tell somebody else to repeat the exact same thing you said, it'll actually be beneficial. So even if you're your own coach, it's actually beneficial. But yeah, I think if so many people believe that they can either choose themselves or other people, but if you actually realize the truth, which is improving yourself benefits other people, and the best way to get the most out of other people is to get the most out of yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So no matter how much lecturing you do to your child about exercising, nothing would work as efficiently as you exercising yourself. So if you care about your kids, if you care about your spouse, if you actually care about your family and you don't want to be a burden to your kids, then the number one thing you can do is take care of yourself. If you want your kids to hate you and to despise you, the number one thing I would recommend is to avoid taking care of yourself. That will help make sure they despise you more than anything else, because they're going to have to take care of you and they'll have to take you to nursing home and you'll be a huge burden. So if you want to do that, that's the number one recommendation I have.
Well, there's probably one that comes a close second. That would be where you say, do as I say, not as I do. No,
Exactly,
I want you to do this, but I'm not willing to do this myself.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Of course, then you do that long enough and you'll probably be all alone in that nursing home.
Yep.
You'll drive away. They don't want to be a part of it anymore. It's funny too. Well, funny is the right word. It's a little bit unhappy because I see it often enough where the parent, you can tell the parent is essentially giving that line to the child: "Do as I say, not as I do," and often holding them to a pretty strict, rough manner. All you can think is, "Wow, you're really setting yourself up, and you're setting the kid up too, which is setting yourself up, because you're just going to make your own miserable." And yet, I don't think they really get that. I think it's probably the last thing they're thinking about. I'm not saying there's a solution to this. I just say it's interesting how often I observe it. I think maybe if there's one lesson to pull out of it, it's a lesson that says, wow, people are really good at maintaining a mindset. It doesn't have to be a healthy one. They will maintain a high mindset come hell or high water. That's how strong we are at maintaining mindsets.
Yeah.
So when we want to change a mindset, it's good to remind ourselves of that, because we may think we're not good at making that change. We're actually pretty damn good at it.
And I think that's you see, like in magazines and things, you see a lot of success stories, and it's like, I want to be alive for my kid in 10 years. And there's people like heavily overwhelmed and make the most amazing transition just for other people and to be that role model. And I know I certainly say to my kids, like, if they're eating too much rubbish, I'm like, don't end up overweight. It's not fun. Life isn't easy when you're overweight.
Yeah, it's quite miserable. See it enough.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, just reiterating what we just said, that the best way to inspire your kids and the people you care about is to be a role model within yourself. So the best way to is not by lecturing, not by telling them, just be the best version of yourself, and they would be inspired and believe it's actually possible for them as well.
Exactly. So we're starting to close in on an hour, and before we run out of time, we want to find out a few things. First of all, I mean, someone might be listening who's saying, Daniel is exactly the kind of person I need to be talking to. It's often helpful, I find, in these situations for the person to know how to find you. So somebody who wants to find you, how do they find you, Daniel?
So I'm most active on Twitter or X at Daniel Roz _fit, for my name, DANIELREZ _FIT. Message me. I have a bunch of testimonials. Scroll through those, see that I'm legit. Look at my post. Message me, and we'll get in a conversation. I'm also Daniel Roz _fit on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of that. And my website is danielrozfit.com.
And is the website the best way to find out more about your one-on-one coaching?
I would accept my Twitter or X, but whatever you like most. Yeah, I know not everyone likes to use Twitter as a platform, as a social media, but whatever you, search me up and you can apply to work with me on all social medias.
When somebody is working with you, what should they expect? I mean, do you do packages, or how do you structure it?
So it really depends, because if your goal is to lose 100 pounds, it's different than if your goal is to lose 10 pounds, because you're not going to lose 100 pounds in a month or two. Right? It's a much longer way. So it depends on the individual, exactly what they need, what they're looking for. So the most accurate answer I can give you is it depends, but I'm happy to talk to anyone who messages me.
So it sounds like you structure the package to the needs of the person rather than asking people to pick A, B, or C. It has to be one of those.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good, because that when you give somebody the ability to basically put their own package together, they can structure it to what their own situation is, to what their own budget is. They can structure it very individually. So that's actually a good thing. All right. Well, then before we part company, there are just two more things I need to share with you. First one is to let you know something that we actually talked about during the show today. And it's something that comes up often, because everybody who comes onto this show is a giver. And like you told in your story, you had your own experience growing up with the junk food and being overweight and so forth. And you ended up making some changes, and you realized, wow, this is something I want to share with the world. So you turned it into a career, maybe not in the way you originally intended to. The pandemic changed that around, but you still did. And in the process of doing that, you named many of the places where you share your thoughts and ideas and suggestions and so forth through Twitter, being X being the main platform that you do that through, but also through others. In the process of putting all that information out, you do what so many givers do. You share things to people who you never meet, you never see, you never know exactly how it's going to play out. But one thing I do know is that there are people who take what you say and they benefit from it. And I realized a couple of years ago that we don't get credit for that very often. I mean, we know when we work with somebody directly, okay, that's somebody I help, or like here with the podcast, somebody writes in and they say, oh, I love that episode. Okay, that's somebody I helped. But there are also other people who benefit that we never hear about it. We don't get credit for it. I said, wait a minute, we should get credit for that. So on behalf of those people you've never met, you've never seen, who you have been helping in all those ways, and you never knew that you were helping them, thank you for what you've been doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Yeah, I really appreciate that message. That's a really good point.
I think it is. I think it's something that gets overlooked. That's why I make it a practice to do that. And then in order to finish things off, I always like to go to my co-host, because I have three co-hosts. I don't know if you know my format, but I do 3 shows a week. Anne-Marie does one of those shows with me. And my co-hosts, one of the reasons I like having them as co-hosts is they're really good at summarizing the conversation and kind of tying it up with a bow on top. Anne-Marie is no exception. She's an excellent bow tire. So Anne-Marie, as you look back on the conversation we had with Daniel today, what's standing out to you as the thing that ties the whole thing together?
I think, mindset comes out at most of our shows, how the importance of that. But I think what Daniel said that impacted me was be a role model. And yes, for your loved ones, yes, for your family, yes, for your friends, but also for yourself. Be the role model that you want to be. So that was a real gem of information for me.
I love that. That was good. So thank you, Daniel Roz, for sharing time and sharing your insights. And we, of course, wish you the best of luck with what you're doing with your coaching program. But thank you for sharing 60 minutes with us. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Definitely. I really appreciate you guys having me on. This was a lot of fun.
And it was for us as well. That's why we call it your daily dose of happy. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.